Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine war news update. First part thereof for the 11th of July 2025. I'm a little bit late to it because I had an early live stream, an interview with the Nigerian journalist Philip Abaji Jr., who was talking to me about Russian disinformation and influence campaigns in the Sahel region of Africa. Really fascinating conversation. Please go and check that out on the live tab. Well worth a listen. I hope you would agree. Okay. Ukraine General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them linked in the description to the video below. 1,040 personnel lost, so that's back over 1,000. 2 tanks, 7 AFVs, well below the daily averages in both those categories. 76 vehicles and fuel tanks, that's fairly low too. 23 artillery systems, which is a snip above the daily average. But for this part of the war, where Ukraine have been routinely slamming Russian artillery, that is a comparatively lower number. So fairly low numbers across most categories, indicating there could be a little bit more stability along the front lines than there has been. In fact, I've been seeing a few mapping updates from different sources saying that Ukrainians are making some gains in a number of places. They're probably making the losses as well in the usual areas, but there are certain gains maybe in Seversk, up in Sumy, among other places. So I'll do a frontline update today, I think, try and fit that in as soon as I possibly can. Right, so talking about personnel losses, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Sergei Lavrov, but he announced in, I think, the presser that since January, Russia has lost 100,000 soldiers dead, not injured. 100,000 since January. Absolutely staggering figures, if indeed that is true. Ukrainian losses are less but still significant, he said. The president believes wars are a waste of money and lives. I find it fascinating that money comes first, lives come second there. I think that tells you quite a lot. Anyway, right, some losses. So if you remember, the 155th Brigade, Naval Infantry Brigade, had a headquarters that were hit recently in Koronovo, up in the Kursk region. And we heard that the deputy commander of, I think deputy commander of the entire Russian Navy died in that. And he was also the former commander of the 155th, might have been the acting commander. Turns out that quite a few people might well have died in that strike. So confirmed, Colonel Serhiy Ilyin, commander of Russia's 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, was eliminated on July the 2nd. Then we heard that also Chief of Staff for them, Colonel Bashkardin Leonid, died. And then we've heard a couple more as well, indeed 4 of them. So also Colonel Nariman Shikaliev, who I think I reported before along with Ilyin. Then Major General Mikhail Yevgenievich Gudkov. Now, actually, it was Gudkov and Sikaliev that I talked about. So we've got Bashkardin and Ilyin as well. And indeed, this morning we hear another one, as I think there's a 5th one added to that as well. A lieutenant captain 2nd rank. So I don't know exactly who the 5th one is. Don't know that it's mentioned here. But anyway, absolute hammering for the 155th there. That was a really top quality strike for the Ukrainians. Indeed, Malcontent News talks about how Alexander Alexievich was eliminated in Polohoy in Ukraine on June the 18th in a missile strike there. So Malcontent News reports, after declining for months, the number of Russian officers being killed in action has increased sharply, yes, unaccounting for the backlog and May the 2025 War Memorial updates. There are 2 reasons for this. Russia has a top-down command structure and no NCO core. Subordinates are not empowered to overcome, adapt and improvise. This has been a cornerstone of Russian military doctrine since the Tsars. This forces senior officers to the front lines. First thing to break is the battle plan, and unlike 2024, when Ukrainian forces made several disastrous mistakes, opportunities like botched troop rotations have been thin. Russian command structure hasn't changed. Ukraine's is finally incrementally improving. The 2 things are happening. Drones mean that there's no such thing as the rear with the gear. The most cowardly REMF is still in harm's way. Istar drones see everything. That's intelligence, surveillance, targeting and reconnaissance. Movement bar is difficult. Command staff meetings near the FLOT, so the contact line, are dangerous. Any OPSEC lapse is deadly. The second thing is that when Russian battle plans fall apart, officers above company or commanders are forced to go to the front line, sometimes to take over, sometimes to enforce orders that are impossible to execute, sometimes to deal with refuseniks and insubordination. The assessment is that the increase in Russian officers' KIA is due to the lack of operational success on the front lines. So far, the only operational goal achieved in 2025 was the capture of Velika Novosilka. Everything else has been tactical and at a brutally high cost. Conclusion: Russia's 2025 summer offensive is not going to plan. The lack of operational success is putting increasing pressure on commanders to achieve more than picture reports in abandoned villages. More field officers are going to the front line to enforce orders and are dying. I think it's also due to Storm Shadow usage as well, or Scale PG, Black Shaheen, maybe the United Arab Emirates version that was exported to them. I think the Ukrainians have got themselves hold of some Storm Shadow cruise missiles and are using them effectively as well. Okay, I showed you this video yesterday. Said I'm pretty worried that all these Colombians are just hanging around together waiting for an Iskander. It's a bit of a photo shoot, but I wouldn't want to be accumulating in those ways. Anyway, it's possibly more significant than that. So here we have a Colombian assault company named RUG has been formed within the 47th Mechanized Brigade. We've heard about the 3rd Assault Brigade and Azov, I think it might be Azov, I'm not sure about the 3rd Assault Brigade, have been talking about getting foreign legions subsumed within or a unit of foreign fighters within their command. So previously you've had the International Legion, but they've not been very good. And I think the command structure has been really poor. So units are actually directly forming foreign units within them and are recruiting as well themselves. And that is a bit of a step change. So here to have this Colombians, well, they also include Peruvians, Brazilians, Zimbabweans, Italians and Mexicans within the 47th Mechanized Brigade, I think is pretty significant there. Right, we have an Andrew Perpetua loss list, not from yesterday, but the day before. It came out just after my update video, my hits and losses video. As you can see, slightly more Russian losses than Ukrainians. But actually, the Ukrainians have a lot of comms stuff, which I generally discount. It's not majorly high value. So if you take that out, in terms of combat assets, that the Ukrainians lost very few. Russians losing a lot more, particularly artillery, and maybe some high value stuff at the top and air defense piece at the top. We'll see. Let's compare. Right, we'll start with the Ukrainians, see what they lost first. Again, 2 days ago, but it gives you a sense of what's being lost at the moment. We're going to miss out all of this pink stuff, Starlinks and whatnot, because they're pretty low value. A couple of radars, but since we don't really know what they are, we're going to start with actually the artillery. So BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket system has been damaged there. Some trucks with S-60s. AS-90 damage, that's a UK provided self-propelled howitzer, and then some D-20s and D-30s damage. So nothing too serious there. A couple of tanks destroyed, T-72, T-64, a couple of MRAPs, a couple of Humvees, all of those damaged, one of them abandoned, a couple of trucks, a few ATVs, and a lot of, well, fair amount of civilian vehicles. But actually, that's not too bad a loss list for the Ukrainians. I'd take that for sure. So it probably shows that they're not attacking too much. Remember, when they were attacking or when they were withdrawing from Kursk, they were losing huge amounts of equipment in so doing, and that was pretty problematic for them. This set of Russian losses shows that they've lost an air defense system, Strela 10, that was destroyed, and then we're going to come down to engineering vehicle. That's actually quite significant. That's a Zemledilia. That is a mine throwing vehicle as far as I remember, and that to be destroyed I think is good news. Artillery, a lot of artillery, D-30s, a whole host of those, Mr. Bs, 2A65 Mr. Bs, quite a few of them. These are all damaged. They might well be destroyed. It's very difficult to do a BDA, battle damage assessment, when you are seeing strikes on artillery, because you're unsure as to whether it's made functionally inoperable or not from the strikes. Whereas a tank basically gets stopped and then you hit it with a load of other drones and you can see it burning. With artillery, you just see a puff of smoke of a drone hitting, but it depends where that drone hit. So just take out the wheel, to take out the breech, loading mechanism, what else? You know, bit of an unknown. So it could be that many of these are actually destroyed rather than damaged. But anyway, a load of howitzers, unknown sort of howitzers, probably Mr. B's, a D30. So FPV drones doing a fair amount of the damage there. There's the occasional heavy shot drone, fiber optic drone, some shelling, once in a blue moon there. Then when we come down to tanks, look at these, losing a good dozen tanks there. Over half of them are tracked garden sheds. Remember, tracked garden sheds are something that looks a little bit like this. This is a Ukrainian version of a Mad Max kind of tracked garden shed. This is actually a BV, a Bandsvan 206. This is the articulated Swedish provided vehicle that, articulated in the middle, is now being made to look like a kind of Mad Max type vehicle. That is functional. You know, I've said for some time now, yeah, we laughed at coke cages at the beginning of the war because they were doing nothing against the NLAWs and the javelins. This is to protect against FPV drones, and they do work to a degree. In fact, evidence that they do work is this. So this is one of the, you can see there, the tank as it was, covered in a skirt and all sorts of bits and pieces. So that's destroyed. You might say, well, it didn't work. Well, actually, apparently, 28th Separate Mechanized Brigade needed about 60 drones to destroy another Russian mega tank. It's difficult to find a weak spot to hit such giants. In addition, they're often stuffed with all sorts of electronic warfare inside. So that is quite incredible. So you may laugh at something looking like that, but it does a job. Right? Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't waste their time doing that if it didn't convey a benefit. They wasted their time with coke cages initially because coke cages on top of a tank were initially created and then before this war, to defend against RPGs and much less effective weapons than a top-down NLAW or javelin. But you saw these coke cages proliferate, and we laughed at them because they couldn't do anything about the javelins. It's like, yeah, cope harder, and that's where you get a load of this kind of cope rhetoric from. Okay, so a lot of tanks here, a lot of Russian tanks taken out, but tracked garden sheds, which means that they are tanks unable to be used as tanks. These are glorified APCs, and that tells you something. Then we have BTR, BMP, BTR 80, just nondescript AFVs and Tiger M. So, yep, okay, a few vehicles here. There are not too many though. There are claims that you're starting to see some lost BTR 70s. If they're using BTR 70s, then it means that they really truly are getting to the end of their stocks there. So various claims, Kobert, Kaval and others talking about how the Russians are cycling through their equipment and they've got to a dangerously low state. ATVs here, a lot of motorcycles and four-wheelers, a lot of civilian vehicles, so on and so forth. So the Russians losing, I think, meaningfully quite a lot more than the Ukrainians there. So that's a worse day at the office for the Russians than for the Ukrainians. Right, moving on, we've seen those two incidents. Here we have, and I'm going to pause that, but you've got a montage. Yeah, brilliant, Mona. You've got a montage of HIMARS hits, taking out things like the Pion or 2S7, which is a really long-range, big-barreled howitzer, self-propelled howitzer. The Uragan multiple launch rocket system, Jitel, which is an electronic warfare system, pretty expensive, and other bits and pieces. What this montage tells you is, one, HIMARS are still being used, so they still are having enough rockets to fire these bad boys, these missiles, and that they are effective. There's some, like Dimko Tenko was saying yesterday, I shared that post with you saying that he was correcting a HIMARS strike with his drone, but it missed by 50 meters because of electronic warfare, so they can be interfered with. But even when you don't have direct hits, there are some hits in this video where there are a lot of casualties, like hits near an infantry mobility vehicle and troop accumulations, and they're all like taken out. I mean, this is a pretty. It's a video of some pretty effective strikes by HIMARS, I have to say, but I can't really show them to you because I'll get into trouble. But so anyway, HIMARS doing a job there. What else do we have here? So, enemy is carrying out massive terrorist attacks on the frontline city of Dobropilya. So this is your Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, Druzhkivka, these sorts of places are getting absolutely hammered. In less than 2 days, more than 100 FPV drones have been flown over the city, according to Deep State. So this frontline place is somewhere you won't want to be. People still try and cling on to life there, of course. But yeah. Just wow. I mean, just having a coffee. That is a coffee shop. Having a coffee, go outside, and you see an FPV drone just come and slam down and explode on the front of some kind of commercial property just down the road. Absolutely shocking. And that is what the Russians are doing consistently. It is absolutely sickening and war criminal. I flashed up an image there of a car that was driving on a road near Dobropilya and with civilians in, and that's the end of them, killed. Civilian car struck by FPV drones operated by the Russians. That's what they're doing. Now, I reported yesterday there seems to be some confirmation. I reported coming from Cossack Gundi, which is Aidan Aslan's account, saying that somewhere in the south a train was hit. Here we have Intel Schizo saying near the town of Uruzhaina, east of Tokmak. Ukrainian forces attacked yet another Russian fuel train, impacted the delivery of 20 tank cars, or the equivalent of 809,000 to 369,600. 316,809 and 369,600 gallons of fuel. Waiting for additional details there. So that is good news if that happened, and we want to see more of that from a Ukrainian point of view, striking those important logistics. Right, distant strikes last night and this morning. In fact, mainly this morning is what I'm hearing. I don't have an infographic of Russian strikes into Ukraine with drones and whatnot. Let's just see if one has come out. But basically this morning they have been attacking Odesa in a major way. I don't think we have any. I don't think usually Tim White will give us one if he's got one. No, we've just got the troop losses stats rather than the drones and missiles sent overnight. So for some reason that's not come out yet. Anyway, sorry to be looking at that live. Right, Odesa though this morning in daylight is being struck with a massive drone attack, according to many. Smoke rising over the city. Local media reports. I believe a recruitment office is hit. That might have been it. As you can see, something significant has been struck there in Odesa, and indeed, you know, you're seeing drone bits. Thank you, Aiden. That's really kind. You're seeing drones with, you know, for military enlistment officers from Odesa locals. So they are, yeah. Meanwhile, Russians share photos of Shahid drones marked in Ukrainian for military enlistment officers from Odesa locals. Yeah, that's definitely been targeted, but unfortunately other places, like for example a stable was hit, horses being killed, other horses injured. There's lots of footage of that. It's pretty horrible. That is a military enlistment office in Odesa. Smoke rising from the impact site, according to locals. They really are, the Russians at the moment, putting in a concerted effort to take out these TCCs, these military enlistment officers. I think that's like the 6th one at least that's been hit recently. Here is a Russian drone that was hit over Odesa, or shot down probably over the Black Sea, coming into Odesa. So lots of heavy machine gun fire by the sounds of it. I've turned off the sound because I'll get into trouble. I'm probably going to get restricted anyway, who knows. So Shahid was hit there. In fact, many do get hit, of course. Russia hit another maternity ward this morning. It came in during a fierce attack on Kharkiv. So Kharkiv continually being targeted, left 9 injuries, but all mothers and babies were okay. There are multiple strikes on the Saltiv district. I mean, this is, what is it, over 2,000 medical facilities have been hit during the war. Many have been hit on purpose. Remember, Russia has fallen from that. Syria, the UN, I think, gave Russia a bunch of coordinates, including 9 coordinates for hospitals not to be hit, and the Russians used those coordinates in order to hit the hospitals. So they have formed for striking medical facilities on purpose. In that Kharkiv-Saltivsky district, the cleanup started, but fires and other damage affected a full-story unused building, a dental clinic, roof and apartment block, shops, garages, and that aforementioned maternity ward. Attack on Odesa, historic Moldovanka district, quite near the centre, was targeted. Residential buildings, car repair garage, and vehicles were damaged there. And then, yeah, I won't show you that video. That's got dead horses, or a dead horse, and other injured horses. It's not very nice. It seems that Russia's given up any pretense of trying to avoid or minimise civilian casualties, says Tim White. Daytime drone attacks in Kharkiv and Odessa prove it. Also attempted attacks with aerial bombs and drones this morning in Zaporizhia, Donetsk regions, and Kryvyi Rih, and surveillance drones. So the only reason you would attack in the daytime is, especially since there's more chance of your drones being shot down in the daytime. So you're going to take that risk. Why? Why would you risk getting your drones shot down more easily to hit in the daytime? What advantage do you have of hitting military targets in the daytime? Well, the answer to that is, well, they're not going for military targets. They're going for civilian targets, and you want more people around, and that's what you get, a rush hour in the daytime. Well, why are you striking at Odessa at rush hour in the daytime? So we can kill more civilians. Terrorism. It's just terrorism. Okay. So Kharkiv was targeted, as mentioned already. And then 7 drones struck Chuhiv district in Kharkiv. So that's how many drones hit there. And then we move on to attacks onto Russia overnight. And actually, the Ukrainians, I think, probably achieved quite a bit last night, although we don't know of too much detail. I mean, they were certainly very active in a whole number of regions. Russia claims that they took down, or that there were 155 drones involved. Massive overnight attack hit several regions in Russia. Explosions in Moscow, Tula, Kursk, and Taganrog areas. We have a drone plant near Moscow and a missile system design bureau in Tula were among the targets. So Tim White says, speaking of drones inside Russia, I wonder what caused this fire in Penza. This was actually yesterday. It seems that a substation transformer at the power plant, which could cause big problems with the electricity in the region, was hit. And indeed, there is imagery, as you can see here, of a significant fire. Now, I don't know if that's just a substation or whether there was effect in the actual CHP, thermal power plant, sorry. Because if you hit a thermal power plant, then that is going to really affect electricity, and it's also not going to probably attract the ire of the US. If the US are going to say, right, we don't want you to hit the hydrocarbon industry and infrastructure, so they're not hitting oil depots and oil refineries, and it seems that they are adhering to that still at the moment. There have been the odd strike here and there, but nothing significant in the way that we previously were seeing it. But hitting a thermal power plant won't cause the Americans to get too up in arms about that, because it's not going to affect, the refinement of oil. It's not going to affect, it's hitting the energy industry as a larger kind of umbrella domain, but it's not going to affect oil prices. So that's could be why they've done that. I don't know, but it might just be a substation. So at this point, and this was from yesterday in the afternoon. So yesterday afternoon, Ukrainian drones were attacking Russia's Tver, Kaluga, and Moscow regions. Loud explosions have been heard in several cities, and Russian air defense systems are actively responding. Now, I've just said, well, why would you attack in the daytime if you're Russia to kill more civilians? But for the Ukrainians, it's not so much the case. So am I just having double standards here? The thing about attacking into Russia is Russia's a massive country. In order to get to certain places, you have to travel often. You set these things off in the nighttime, and then by the time they actually get to their targets, it's fully in the daytime. I think that's less a case with Russia because they're releasing most of their drones much closer to the Ukrainian border, and then they're flying into Ukraine. Yeah. Ukrainian drones are roaming the skies in Kursk. So that was last night. Ukrainian drones struck the Voronin aviation plant in Lukhovitsky, part of the MIG corporation under Russia's state-owned UAC and Rostec. The strategic site produces and upgrades MiG-29, MiG-23, MiG-29K, Kub, and MiG-29M or M2 fighters. Multiple hits were confirmed. Damage is being assessed. Don't know much more than that. Then we have a loud warning near the Tula Instrument Design Bureau, key facility specializing in air defense missile systems. Ukrainian Shahid type drones have been seen flying near the perimeter. Don't know about damage there. Taganrog drones were also evident around Taganrog and going towards Rostov on Don, that kind of area. News just coming in of another significant incident inside Russia, this time in Orenburg region, says Tim White. A fire has broken out at what's likely to be the Orsk MZ mechanical plant. Here we can see some images of something on fire there. He continues, local media report workshops on fire at the mechanical plant in Orsk. Interestingly, the building is completely covered with anti-drone nets. They supply Russia's MOD with various products, including cartridges and components for MLRS, as well as equipment for oil and gas sectors. So that is there. Then we have a bit of a summary. So let's just go see through Tim White's thread, see if he's got anything else to add. So as we've already heard, Moscow district, 100 miles southeast from the Red Square, is the Lukhovitsky aviation plant used in production of MiG fighters. Explosions, but air defense may have stopped damage. We don't fully know there. Another video from there, the guy saying, I've seen it with my own eyes, and then profanities as the explosion happens. It's very near the ground, but inconclusive whether it's a drone hit or notoriously low-flying Pantsir hitting a drone. North to Dubna, a town which is also in Moscow Oblast, but right on the regional border with Tver. 6 weeks since drones have made holes in the roof of the Kronstadt factory here, and in the early hours, a drone paid another house call to check on what's going there. So drones have hit Dubna machine building plant, and this is a video we saw earlier. Drone development plant, serious target, along with the plant in Tatarstan, so that's Yelabuga. This one is crucial to destroy if possible to prevent up to 1,000 drones a night hitting Ukraine. It's Russia's first serial plant for many drones. So that is definitely target, number 1, 2, 3, or 4. Hopefully some serious damage can be done there. There were many other drones and explosions evident in Russia overnight and this morning. Tver, Rostov, Lipetsk, Smolensk, Oriol, Bryansk, Kursk, and Belgorod also were affected. Tula, some explosions you can hear on camera there. I won't play them. And Ukraine seems to be targeting this Shipanov Design Bureau of Instrumentation in Tula. It reportedly specializes in producing anti-aircraft missile systems. And then news of that Orenburg region that I've already talked to you about. So quite a lot going on, really. And I guess we'll see what emerges throughout the day. It's worth, and I have warned about how this is surely going to happen. I would be very afraid to be flying any plane over Russian airspace these days. Russian air defense opened fire on a passenger plane going from Minsk in Belarus to Moscow. The plane could have been confused with a Ukrainian drone. Pantsir air defense system mistakenly fired at a passenger plane, which suffered minor damage. The crew successfully landed the plane. Wow. Imagine being on that plane. Captain announcing that we have indeed been hit by air defences. Please fasten your seatbelts. Kyiv Independent reports that Russia has arrested a truck driver reportedly or allegedly transporting drones for Ukraine's Operation Spiderweb. Mediadzona's source says that Mikhail Ryumin was unaware that his vehicle was carrying Ukrainian drones hidden beneath the roofs of the frame house structure. Okay, now on to other bits and pieces, but time for a swig of tea. Can't let Ivan's tea delivery go to waste. Right, okay, other bits and pieces. We're going to start with, oh my goodness, so the Kuznetsov, the only Russian aircraft carrier, has, it appears, been condemned to the scrap pile. So it's been under repair for I don't know how long. It keeps getting pushed back. And indeed, sailors from the Kuznetsov have now been sent to the front line because they're obviously no use sitting around drinking vodka up in St. Petersburg or wherever it is. No, it's not St. Petersburg. Repairs and modernisation of the aircraft carrier Admiral Kuznetsov have been suspended, and the Russian Defense Ministry is considering the possibility of abandoning the ship's restoration. Experts interviewed by the publication do not rule out its write-off and disposal due to the moral and physical obsolescence. So I don't quite know what that means, but essentially it's not functional by the looks of it and probably won't be. So cut your losses. That's massive. You know, the only carrier that they've got. Right, Sergei Lavrov met with Marco Rubio yesterday, and before he met, he insisted on expressing the preconditions for peace with Ukraine, the normal maximalist stuff, even before talks about talks. Lavrov may be feeling less secure in his role right now, says the analyst. Putin dismissed Deputy Foreign Minister and Presidential Special Representative to the Middle East and Africa, Mikhail Bogdanov, on July the 9th. No reason was given. In the meantime, while making sure his office windows were tightly locked, Lavrov took the time to make it clear that Russia now wants $300 billion in frozen assets back, sanctions relief and normalization of trade relations with the US before they talk about having peace talks. He must know none of that will happen. Rubio told him that the US was deeply disappointed that they were making no effort towards peace. It doesn't seem to want to be something anyone in the US wants to say out loud, but they just can't cope with the fact that Russia wants the war to go on. They're powerless to affect it in their eyes. Yet that's nonsense, because if Trump wants it ended rather than this stupid and pointless sanctions bill, a major aid bill for Ukraine to fight the Russian invasion would quickly refocus minds in the Kremlin. Having upset the megaverse over Epstein, farm report exports, Medicaid cuts, Trump won't do more. Okay. Well, interesting, because Trump might well be doing more, but there's a little more to this maybe than meets the eye. So this is Trump saying he's disappointed in Russia.
Tom, that's right. The president said he's disappointed in Russia and told us he thinks he'll have a major statement to make about Russia on Monday. Though when pressed, he did not say what that statement will be. The president also said he just made a deal today with NATO in which he says the U.S. will send weapons to Ukraine through NATO, and NATO is, quote, paying for those weapons 100%, including the Patriot air defenses that Ukraine has been asking for, and that NATO will distribute them. We reached out to NATO tonight. No response yet, Tom.
So I don't know if this has anything to do with the breaking news update that I released last night over the releasing of a presidential drawdown authority amount to the tune of $300 million, or whether that was a confusion over this. This, I don't know if it's cheeky. Trump is at the end of the day, he's getting weapons to Ukraine, but he's not really doing anything other than selling weapons from, I presume, Raytheon, RTX, Lockheed Martin. I presume these are new ones. There's not enough detail yet. So Axios is reporting that Trump will sell weapons to NATO for Ukraine. So 2 being bought by Germany, 1 being bought by Norway. That appears to be what this is about. He confirmed NATO will be giving those weapons and paying for them. So NATO doesn't pay for stuff. NATO doesn't have the funds. What NATO does is demand that people spend on their own defences. It takes nominal amounts of money in order to function and have offices and, pay certain salaries. But essentially, NATO doesn't pay for things. NATO nations pay for things. So when he says that, I don't know if there is some other situation going on here, or whether he doesn't really understand what. I don't think he understands NATO, because he so frequently says people owe us stuff because we've been spending more on defense than they have, so they owe us. He seems to think NATO is something you pay for. Like a pizza, like you'll get round and you chip in for a pizza. I've paid more for you for this pizza, so I'm having 2 pieces, you're only having 1. So if you're having 2 pieces, you owe me some money. That's how he sees it, but that's not what NATO is you spend money on your own defence, so that when your defence is called for, when your forces are called for during an Article 5 invocation, then you have requisite forces to be able to commit to a NATO mission. But it's not it's difficult to say you owe us because we've been spending more on our defense than you've been spending on your defense. And we can talk about how you work out your expenditure on defense, and the US will include things like medical care that's not included in countries that have universal healthcare systems, so on and so forth. So it's all problematic anyway. But yeah, I don't quite know what's going on here. But anyway, good news is that somebody's paying, probably Germany and Norway, are as NATO nations. It's not NATO paying, it's NATO nations paying for those air defense systems to Ukraine. Now, this understandably, not understandably, I understand it, but it's ridiculous, is setting off the MAGA type. So not only has Epstein got them going, but I think this move to help Ukraine has got both the trolls and bots going nuts, as well as some of the actual real MAGA people, but it's difficult to tell. America First Warrior, I don't think is an American. I would be very doubtful. As Trump's neocon foreign policy to his deep state portrayal with the Epstein list, and you get this, add that to that, and you get this. It was a circus act. All of politics is an act. Choosing one of the two people they give us as a choice does nothing. The truth is, it will be the same circus, just a different clown. Trump hasn't arrested any of the deep state because he's their main man. Just crazy. Focus on your schizophrenic administration. Trump has turned into Biden. Lol. APAC, that's the lobbying for Israel, and deep state are your de facto presidents, and so on and so forth. I mean, just there are loads of people turning on Trump because of his support for Ukraine and because of Jeffrey Epstein and the disappearance of the client list, even though Alan Dershowitz came out last night and said, I know who's on the list, I've seen the list, it is a thing, type thing. And he was Epstein's lawyer. So, and he had been on Epstein's plane a bunch of times, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it's going to be interesting because you are going to see, as we're seeing here from this torrent of statements from MAGA sources, you are going to see a bit of a breakup, I think, in the MAGA information space, given the US seemingly a bit more willing to support Ukraine. That's, I mean, as they should be, and most normal people, not MAGA types, most normal people would understand why the US needs to support Ukraine. Right, Macron and Starmer had quite some meetings over the last few days as Macron had a state visit to the UK. It seemed really positive for a bunch of reasons. Now, I know some people will be like, right, I don't like Starmer because of this, or I don't like Macron because of that. Forget like their individual issues or the individual issues that you might have with them. Just in terms of European security, actually, and unity. Even though the UK is not in the EU, this was just some really good stuff. They're working together. They signed a deal on nuclear deterrence. That's really important. The immigration one was headlined actually by it's really interesting. So what happened is when they were delivering what they've achieved in this meeting, Macron listed all the achievements like nuclear deterrence, and we're going to work on this, we're doing that, and we've got support for Ukraine, coalition of the willing. We're going to be building these missiles, cruise missiles, and blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom is like one in, one out agreement for immigration. Starmer led with that kind of last one. That for Macron, that was less important. For Starmer, that was the most important because he's fighting off reform and it's all about immigration. And so that was a big thing that came out of that. And the news was talking almost exclusively, and people like Alistair Campbell saying this is really not on. Like the BBC, Sky News, Channel 4 News, they're all focusing completely on this immigration deal with Macron. But there were so many other really important things that came out of that meeting with between these two leaders. One of which was a coalition of the willing. So the countries of the coalition of the willing will patrol the air and sea space of Ukraine after the conclusion of the ceasefire agreement with Russia, and I presume that means no real American involvement. Countries prepared to provide troops for a post-ceasefire force in Ukraine agreed to set up a headquarters in Paris for rapid deployment after hostilities end. I think it would then go to UK after it's rotating maybe, but I think it's a year in Paris and a year in London. In a statement, coalition members said they had agreed on a Paris headquarters for the first year of the force, which is to be known as a multinational force Ukraine, and then rotating it to London with plans for a coordination cell in Kiev. So that was one really important thing, as well as nuclear deterrence and working together, which is a move away from the United States. Incredibly important stuff. And yet it's all about, 50 migrants being sent back to France a week or something like that was seen as like what everyone wanted to talk about because everyone's obsessed with immigration. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but yeah. Now I'm going to leave you with something positive because, let's have some positivity. Here, the Ukrainians are saving a goat rather than, I don't know, using drones to kill endangered species such as the white pelican. And by the way, you could hear outgoing artillery. I think that was outgoing artillery there. Womp womp. Just in case I get done for the copyright for the music. There you go. Look, little goatee saved and not even on a leash, just like wanting to follow them. It's like a little dog. And in the dugout with them. That's nice, isn't it? So there you go. A bit of humanity involved in the war there. This is their own country. These are their own animals. This is everything about what they are defending is important to these Ukrainians. For the Russians, they can send a drone to kill a white pelican and they don't give a damn because they lack the humanity and they lack the care over the place because it's not really their place. Lavrov and Putin might tell you it's Russia, but it's not. It's Ukraine. And they don't care for it like the Ukrainians do. Anyway, take care. Speak to you soon.